So I thought I'd do a video of this just to make sure that everybody gets the same exact instruction for this poem. And that way you can also go look at this again later if you missed class or if you just want another run through the poem. To start, I want to remind you that our goal is to interpret the attitude and motivation of the speaker. The speaker is the voice of the poem, not the author. I truly cannot emphasize this enough. This is one of the biggest mistakes students make when we're reading poems. It's just like when you read a book, you don't make the assumption that the author and the narrator are one and the same. It's the same case for poetry. Poets may write in a voice similar to their own, but they may not, and oftentimes we don't know. So we will always treat it as a narrator, not the author's voice. So I'm going to go through this poem line by line and point out the details that help us interpret the attitude and motivation of the speaker. Starting in line 1, he seems to me equal to gods, that man, whoever he is opposite you, sits and listens close to your sweet speaking and lovely laughing. So you can see that I bracketed the first 2 lines and underlined the word you, because these first 2 lines show us where the speaker is and what they are doing. More specifically, we can see that the speaker is watching someone who they call you and observing that they are sitting with someone else, specifically a man. Oh, all right, that just fit on the screen there. And so before moving on, I think it's important that we ask ourselves a question about this, right? So what is the speaker's relationship to the subject of the poem? And so from now on, anytime you hear me say the subject, that is this person, you, whoever the speaker is watching and talking about. Next, you can see that I've added underlines to sweet speaking and lovely laughing. This is because this shows us something about the speaker. These phrases help us understand how the speaker feels towards the subject. Using words like sweet and lovely demonstrate possibly a relationship of love, admiration, maybe infatuation. And puts the heart in my chest on wings, right? That's definitely a feeling of romance. So I think that's further evidence to support the idea that the speaker's attitude is possibly one of love, admiration, or infatuation. The next lines I'm going to mark are lines 7 and 8. Lines 7 and 8 help us understand the speaker because we can see that the speaker is speechless when they're looking at the subject. So perhaps the speaker wants to talk to this person, but they can't. They feel speechless. They feel nervous. So we're getting a better sense of the speaker. They seem to be in love, maybe infatuated, but nervous. They want to talk to the person because of how they feel, but can't. And further evidence of that comes in lines 9 through 12. Thin fire is racing under the skin. This is an example of figurative language. So figurative language is when a writer describes something in a way that is sort of more metaphorical or figurative and not literal. So the speaker does not literally have fire in their skin, but figuratively, this could represent a state of anxiousness or nervousness. And we see another example of figurative language here. Drumming fills ears. She is not literally or she or he is not literally listening to drums, but it's a figure of speech. And so I'm going to add a note here that the author uses figurative language to emphasize the anxiety, hard time spelling, or nervousness of the speaker. And this actually sort of continues on, right? Cold sweat holds me, shaking grips me. So all of this here is really giving us a greater picture of what is going on in the speaker's mind. And here in line 14, greener than grass. This is an interesting line. So it occurred to me that if grass is really green, it's very much alive, it's thriving. So green grass could represent something alive. But then in the next line, so we see greener than grass I am and dead. So there's a strange contrast between the speaker describing him or herself as green grass and then also as dead. So perhaps the speaker feels alive and dead at the same time, which could be a really interesting element to consider when thinking about their attitude and motivation. So I'll just make a note of that in a different color here just so it stands out. The speaker feels both alive and dead. And then I'll just ask ourselves a question here. What is the point of the speaker feeling this way? What does it show? And then, like we learned, Sappho's poems are often incomplete. This one is rather complete for the most part. However, we have this strange, unfinished last line, but all is to be dared because even a person of poverty, and that's where it stops. I think this last line is actually really revealing. All is to be dared. This speaker is sort of saying, like, I'll dare everything. I will put it all out there. It's a risk I'm willing to take. And so again, coming back to this motivation, it seems like the speaker really, really wants to go talk to this person who is laughing and sweetly speaking with someone else. That is how I interpret the poem. I'll be curious if you guys have any sort of different takes on it, especially this last line. With poverty, we start to think that maybe social class or money could be in the mix. So we've gathered a lot of information about the speaker's attitude and motivation. And now I'm confident that you could respond to a prompt asking you to describe the attitude and motivation of the speaker.